You will grind our enemies into oblivion.
I actually want to open the show up with the news that we missed out on this past week, and I want to get both of our thoughts kind of out there in show format. All right, where do I start? Helldivers, who facilitated it? Whose idea it was? I think everybody's leaning towards it was Sony, right? That this whole
Sony's idea, but they knew 6 months in advance.
Okay, so this is why, and I think that's the part. That's why I love to talk about it here, because I do think maybe that part of it is getting missed out, right?
So it's getting swept under the rug.
It's getting
for sure.
largely swept under the rug because I think that Sony's the easier target, right? And
Sony's the easier target, and they made the game, which is a good game.
Right.
So there is a kind of forgiveness inverted commas factor, but they are to blame as well. There is a lot of blame on their behalf, particularly because it was actually the CEO of Arrowhead that made the decision not to link at the beginning because they wanted as many people to flow through the game as possible.
That context is so very important and so very vital. So it's not like there was a blind side by any means. And one could make the argument if, well, let me ask you this. You think the blow is a lot softer if they did it at launch, right? If the requirement, I'm not to say that there wouldn't be people that have an issue with it. What I'm saying is if that was kind of transparent, that was the direction it was going either way, right? Or if they had the linking happening, let's say at launch, I personally believe that the blow is a lot softer and it's going to be far more well received than what you got now.
Absolutely. I mean, we already know that Ghost of Tsushima, which is coming to the PC,
yes,
you're going to have a PlayStation Network account attached to that.
Mm-hmm.
So if people knew beforehand, I don't think there would be anything near what. I don't think there'd be anything, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
But they were unsure of how many people were going to play the game, and they took a punt, shall we say, on the fact that if they'd done that at the very beginning, they were concerned that they wouldn't be able to get people onto the servers.
Interesting.
And so they made the decision not to do that, with a little bit of wishy-washy language along the lines of may need a PlayStation Network account to play, but there was nothing in the Sony end-user license agreement that said that you did, and then they retroactively changed it.
Yeah, that's always going to be a problem.
This is what's caused most of that's why I think a lot of it is deflected away from Arrowhead. It's the fact that Sony were very disingenuous about it and then tried to just play that it was always going to be that way.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, and I've seen some things floating around. And again, I think that's because I think the natural instinct or reaction is to try to give definitely the smaller AA or whatever company the benefit of the doubt. And I'm not saying that's unjustified. Because I saw that people were saying, even though that doesn't seem to have much to do with it, that, well, looking at the launch and some of those issues that they had, this requirement was more or less either it fell through the cracks, either it was removed because of the server related issues that they had before. However, that does not change more or less the fact that this was something that they knew for a while, right? Going into at least Arrowhead, that is concerned, that they knew for a while. And then again, it kind of popped up as of recent. Now, with all that being said, in like a 3-day process, if you want to call it that, it was a reversal. Sony comes out. You guys have seen our videos on this, and they come out and they say, okay, yeah, we've heard you. Yeah, fuck that. We're not going to do that, because I think the backlash, and maybe it was because, and this was the argument that I made, it had less to do with as the dogs are screaming.
Yeah,
right
no,
now,
I can hear that.
Yeah, they have some, it's actually the guy mowing the grass, and Cammy has to make sure that she knows, the grass person that's mowing the grass knows who's boss of the fucking house, or maybe she's trying to get him to do his job. Nonetheless, 3-day period. Sony reverses. I know CEO or the creative director, who I think is the CEO, came out and said, well, I'm really surprised at this, and it speaks to kind of this community and what you guys are able to do in terms of your capability. Now, I do think that there was a financial incentive that was a part of that. I mean, you saw people canceling PlayStation Network accounts.
I think that was the major factor.
Yes. So you hit them where it hurt, right?
Yeah.
You hit them where it hurt.
They were going for refunds on the game, and they were canceling PlayStation Network accounts on top of that. So it was a two-pronged attack. It's as if Arrowhead had trained their player base to coordinate an attack against an enemy on a grand scale. But yeah, it was a two-pronged attack. It wasn't just it just wasn't just attempted refunds on Steam. It was, okay, if you're going to deny refunds based on time played, which is shitty because of what they did, right, because players didn't know what was going to happen.
And I can think before you continue, the big part of that also was basically the game. What was going to happen with those that lived in those areas that had already sunk maybe hours into it, that PlayStation, the PSN Plus or whatever, is not even available to them.
Yeah,
right.
In a huge, like 177 countries. Yeah.
Quite a bit of countries out there, right?
And they wouldn't be able to play. That would be it. They'll be done. Yeah,
bingo. So just I'll let you continue on, but I think that context was important.
Yeah. So if because Steam were refusing refunds based on time played, they went, okay, then we'll start canceling PlayStation Networks instead, because that's something that they do have control over.
Right.
And so I think Sony saw what was going on, because obviously canceling a PlayStation Network has a further connotation, because if Sony's going to require you to link it to play a game, then that means they're not going to get that game because they've canceled the PSN. So that's going to be lost sales. So I said on my afternoon tea show on Sunday, which was a few hours before the decision was made, because I think it dropped at midnight Pacific time. So that was like 8 a.m. in the morning for me the next day on the Monday. I said I would be absolutely amazed if Sony didn't capitulate and give in. And within a day they did. They'd given in and reversed that decision. Rightly so.
Right. Yeah, of course they did. And yeah, the financial incentive was there. I think that more or less is, look, it shows if there is to be a tactic, that's the one that is most effective, right? Because the bigger you are, especially when you are, I mean, Sony is a fucking massive multinational billion-dollar corporate entity. The bigger you are, when you are that massive, I don't think we've seen it across industry, you can get away with I don't want to say spitting in the face of your customers, but you can get away with leaving a poor taste in their mouth, and they're just going to take it for the most part. You're the first in, you're the best dressed, and you've been around for so long, and you're a bit of a mainstay. So with a company like that, I think that the only way, shame, for example, isn't going to be the most effective tool. You can say that they suck all day long, but as long as kind of the contribution is there financially, they're going to be like, whatever. But once you see en masse people saying, you know what, and not just saying, I guess actively doing, and I think a lot of the subscription model, and I say this from experience with the Rippaverse, right? Like kind of what we're doing with memberships. A lot of these companies, right, a lot of their bottom line is what's central to that is their subscription model, right? That means that they have a baseline amount of money that they can count on and bring in. Sure, it's going to fluctuate, it's going to go up and down, but you at least have that idea of what that floor is going to be because of the subscription model. So once you start attacking that and people start saying, you know what, we're pulling out there, I think that's what did it for them. And it just became so obvious that it was going to be long-term, far more detrimental for them, especially considering Helldivers is one of the biggest games right now It was going to be detrimental for them to keep this up. And so, if anything, if there's something that I think everybody can learn here when dealing with companies like that, it's about the financial aspect. That's how you hurt them more than anything. Or if you're trying to have them adjust their approach in any sort of way, they have to feel it there more than anything. And I think that's what showed it. So look, gamers at the end of the day called a dub there. Again, I don't think that, and I think that's what we both were talking about earlier, that Arrowhead is completely absolved of just everything. I think they have, there was, and maybe they've learned from that, right? They've kind of learned, as many developers or anybody that's making deals with the devil, kind of understand that shit happens, right? And maybe make an adjustment going forward when they learn from it. But at the end of the day, the gamers did win. And that to me is what I guess matters for a lot of us. And we'll see kind of what happens in the future. If Sony does plan to still do anything goofy, because the verdict is still out. If you read the actual message that they sent out, they're like, hey, we're still analyzing kind of what we're going to do in the future. So we'll see what happens. But at least gamers caught a victory today. Thanks for watching. Right now, the Rippaverse is in the middle of our latest campaign, Yaira #1, which was written by the Saskas. Head over to rippaverse.com, pre-order, and check out our first live-action trailer and the latest Rippaverse Studios production, Y'all Be Easy.